Okay, this is review 4 in college algebra, and the name of the section is factoring. Factoring is going to be a very, very important skill to learn. You've already done it lots and lots. We're just going to review some of it, and we're going to look at a couple different types of factoring, grouping, and trinomials of a couple different ways. And then there's some special factorization that we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and start with the whole idea of common factors. So if you look at example 1 on page 22, we've got 15 plus 10x minus 5x squared. Now remember what you're doing. You're looking at each one of the terms and deciding if there's anything common to each one of those terms. And in this case, there is. The number 5 is common, which leaves me a 3 plus 2x minus x squared. And we've just gone ahead and factored that. If you look at the B part of example 1, we have 12x squared y squared. And we're subtracting 20x cubed y. Find out what's common between 12 and 20, and you'll figure out pretty quick that it's a 4, and that leaves me with a 3 here and a 5 there. And can I factor out anything else? Okay, do I have anything common here that I have here? Let's see, I've got an x squared that's common to both of them, which leaves me an x in there because I had 3 of them and I took 2 out. Here I took both of them out, so there aren't any left with this 3 right there. And then I look at my y. I have 2 y's there and 1 y there, so I can only factor out one of the y's because there's only one that's common. And I've got 1 left there, and I don't have any in the second parenthesis because I had 1, I took it out. I had 2, I took one of them out, leaving me with 1 right there. So there's my answer as far as being able to find a common factor and pulling it out. So not too terrible. Then we've got factoring by grouping. Usually the factoring by grouping works when you have more than 3 terms in an expression like this. And so what you do is you look and say, well, are there 2 terms that I have some similar things in? And I go ahead and look here, and yeah, they both have x's, and these both have common coefficients. I mean, I can factor a 5 out. So what I'll do is I'll write this as x cubed plus 3x squared, and I'll put it in a grouping symbol. And then I will, and remember in one of the other lessons, when you had something and you wanted to take parentheses off, you took if there was a negative sign, you took the parentheses off as long as you changed the sign of everything in there. The same is true when you do the opposite. When we put parentheses on, we change the sign of what's inside the parentheses. So right here, this 5 was a positive, a negative right here. Pulled that negative out, it became a positive. And this negative 15 turns into a positive. Alright, so now we have 2 groups here. So we can factor out an x squared, and we're left with an x plus 3 here. And we can factor out a 5, and we're left with an x plus 3 here. Alright, and what we can do is we can take what's in there and put that together. Whatever's not in the parentheses, we group those together, and whatever is in the parentheses, in this case they're the same, we will get an x plus 3. Okay, so you get that for an answer. Now I do these just a hair different than what the book does, but same idea. That's grouping, and we're going to be doing a little bit more with the grouping later. All right, trinomials. X squared plus, this is example 3. And I'm sorry I'm talking so fast, but just trying to get through some of this because most of this, all of this, you've already done. There's one type of factoring where you factor into what is called 2 binomials. And the way this works is you take the square root of the first term. And this works only when there is a 1 in front of the x squared. There's an assumed 1. So you put an x there and an x there. Now we find a number, or 2 numbers, when multiplied give me a 6, a positive 6, and added give me a positive 5. So we have 6 and 1 gives me a 6 when I multiply, and when I take 1 away from 6 I get 5, so that's a possibility. I also have 3 and 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 plus 2 is 5. So let's see what happens here. Let's put the 6 and 1 in there. Does 6 times 1 equal 6? Yes. Does 6 plus 1 equal 5? No. So that is wrong. And let's try 3 and 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Does 3 plus 2 equal positive 5? Yes. So that ends up being the factoring. Now again, we're not solving for x because there's no equal sign. The only time you're going to ever solve for x is when you're given an equal sign. Okay, so let's go on here and look at one like 2y squared minus 14y plus 24. All right. What we're going to do here, first thing that we're going to do when we look at these expressions is we're going to see if there's anything we can factor out. We can factor out a 2. Okay, once we factor out a 2, that 2 just drags along with us, and we have this trinomial here that we're going to see if we can factor. A square root of the first term. Two numbers multiplied together that give me 12. Let's see, my options. Oops, that's not very good too. Okay, those are my options. So, can I get a negative 7 when I add or subtract any of those? Okay. 12 and 1. They give me 12, but I can't add or subtract 12 and 1 and get negative 7 in any way whatsoever. Let's see. 3 and 4. Can I multiply 3 times 4 and get positive 12? Can I add them and get negative 7? No, I get positive 7. But what if I make them both negative? Two negatives, negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12, and negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7. So those two work. And that ends up being my factored or my solution to what I was doing. So remember, two numbers multiplied together give you the third term and its sign. Added together give you the middle term and its sign. Don't forget, you've got to get the sign as part of it. All right, let's continue on here. And let's see, we're 7 minutes in here, not doing too bad. We have x to the fourth minus 2x cubed minus 8x squared. So again, first thing you're going to do is you're going to factor out what you can. Okay, so I factored out an x squared. And the way I can tell if I did this right is when I multiply this, do I get x to the fourth? Yes. Do I get negative 2x cubed? Yes. Do I get negative 8x squared? Yes. So I factored out the right stuff. All right, so now I have x squared, and let's see if I can factor this down any. So I'm looking for two numbers multiplied together that give me negative 8, added give me negative 2. So when you've done this a lot, it's not too hard to do. 4 times 2 is 8, but not negative 8. So in order to get a negative, one of these has to be a negative. Either that one or the 2 has to be a negative. Okay, so you're going to have to play around with it a little bit to find out what it is. All right, one of the clues is this sign right there. You're going to have to, when you're adding 4 and 2, get a negative number. So this sign right here gives you a clue on which of these two numbers is negative. If this is negative, the sign of the largest of those two numbers is also negative. Okay? So negative 4 times positive 2 is your negative 8. Negative 4 plus 2 gives you your negative 2. So when this sign is negative, the largest number when you're factoring is also going to be negative. So you end up with that for an answer. All right, so that is some trinomials and some work that you do when the number in front, the leading coefficient, when the number in front is a 1. So we did this one. So notice there's a 1 there. What if that number were an 11? then solving this is a little bit different. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over this. Now there's two methods to do it. Back when I was a kid, they did it the hard method. And since then, obviously, I've learned a few things. And there's another method to solve these through grouping. The book teaches you both ways. I'm not really sure why they teach you the old way because it takes forever to do it. And I don't really see any purpose in it, so I'm just going to teach you the grouping method. So let's go ahead and practice one of these. Okay, so there we go. A number in front of the x squared that's not a 1. All right, so what we're going to do is, first thing we do is we're going to take this 3 times negative 8, and we're going to write it over here. So what we're doing is we're looking for two numbers multiplied together, give me negative 4, and added, give me a negative 10. Okay, so I'm just going to put one down here. 12 and 2 multiplied together give me a 12 or a 24, and added together I could take 12 minus 2 or a negative 12 plus 2 and get negative 10. So that's how I found the 12 and the 2. Two numbers multiplied together can give me 24, and I can get a 10 out of those. It's just knowing what to put as far as the sign is concerned. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute a 12 and 2 for the negative 10. So if I put negative 12x plus 2x, what does this equal? Multiplied together, it gives me negative 24. Added together gives me a negative 10x. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to find two numbers to put in here instead of the negative 10x. I'm substituting negative 12x plus 2x for the negative 10x. That's all I did. So it's like, well, which numbers do I put in here? I mean, negative 12 and 2 work, but so does negative 14 and 4. Okay, I determine which two numbers go here by knowing that when I multiply them, I get this negative 24. That's how I decide what two numbers I go there. All right, so now, before I erase all that, I'm going to rewrite this real quick. And I'm going to group them. Group these first two and these first two. All right, now I'm going to take this first one and factor out a 3x. And this one here, I'm going to factor out a 2. And notice, this will always happen. What's left in the parentheses will be the same. So in order to solve this, you're going to take the 3x and the 2 and put them in a grouping symbol, or parentheses. And the x minus 4, you're going to write one time. And you are done at that point right there. All right, I am going to continue to show you some like that, and just to make sure you've got it down pretty good, but I'm in 13 minutes on the video, so I'm going to have to stop here and we'll just continue with the next video.